Salam ve salam to two mats stuck in conversation. That was my butchered attempt at Azerbaijani, spoken in Azerbaijan. Probably mispronounced all of that. My name is Matthew Hector.
Hi, I'm Matthew Gallant.
And as we said, this is Two Mats Stuck in Conversation. This is a podcast about utter kakprat or bullshit or nonsense talk, which is what we do very well, the two of us. Our last
Indeed.
podcast was interesting, but before we talk about that, our Instagram is at Two Mats Stuck in Conversation. And actually, we're going to jump straight into our lockdown recap. 1, 2, 3. Dun dun!
Done.
That was bad. That was really bad.
It could be worse.
I'll probably fix it in the edit.
Tivis, I wanna. We do this lockdown recap. We tell the number of cases in South Africa. We are in Cape Town, South Africa, by the way,
Yeah.
stuck in quarantine. And we do these numbers of cases to just look back and for a review. So when we started this podcast 10 episodes ago, this is episode 11.
That was the
we're
1st
recording-
of April. It was released, I believe.
Today is the 20th of June. It's currently 5:30. So that was the 1st of April, so a while ago. And when you start the podcast, there was 1,380 cases in South Africa and 5 deaths. Today, there are 87,715 cases, 47,825 recoveries, and 1,831 deaths. Just almost 3 months later.
I suppose what's our active numbers? Do you know?
Just over 40,000.
Yeah,
Just under 40,000.
that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
What did you say that we were speaking on the phone? The percentage of our population, it's like 0.00.
It's like 0.1% or something.
So it's
Uh.
not taken like our population aggressively, but it's still a large number of people, and it is still
Yeah,
spreading quite aggressively, I believe.
Yes.
But I believe am I wrong in saying it's calming down a bit?
Oh, you're very wrong. Very wrong. Our daily numbers, like our daily infections each day is actually increasing. It's getting pretty bad. It's very bad here in the Western Cape. I think we have most of the country's cases here.
Oh yeah, I know that for
Um,
sure.
It's 8.96 cases worldwide. Let me just double check that, but I think it's 8.96 cases, which is 8.96 million cases. I want to correct myself there.
Jeez.
Absolutely insane. To have that many infections.
It's remarkable how many cases we've gotten in the last.
Sorry,
3 months.
8.69 million cases.
That's
Just to correct myself.
that's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
But we would asked you, like, when do you think you will be resuming? Like, when do you think it's normal enough for you to go to the cinema? And you were saying hopefully December.
Hopefully December. They're opening up cinemas this week. This week they're doing this thing called Advanced Level 3, which basically opens up casinos, sit-down restaurants, hairstylists, most importantly for me because my hair needs a cut.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm quite shocked by the casinos, not gonna lie. I don't think I'll be going to the cinema anytime soon. I love the movies, but I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon. But yeah, they want us to return back to life as we used to know it now, but I don't know. Things are still very weird.
This
Very, very
is episode 11, if you didn't realize. And we've come. It's only 11 episodes, but a lot has changed. We've come a long way. That you and I, at the very least. Last
Yeah.
week we did a very special commemorative episode of 10 episodes. We did a YouTube video, and we created a bit of a cringy mid-video intro into our main topic. You jumped on the guitar. I did some electronic piano.
We both sang.
We both butchered. Uh, if you want to go see that video, go check it out. Depending on how the video does, we might transition to video, but if it doesn't do so well, we'll only do a video every now and then. You might actually be
But we
listening
will
to this
have.
on YouTube if we post the audio.
Yeah. We'll probably start posting audios to YouTube for sure, and probably we'll have to put up the other episodes as well on YouTube. The last like 9 and
Yeah, that's the
so.
plan. We'll eventually
Yeah.
jump into that. And now it's time for our music recap. Grant, what are you listening to?
There's a song by Hobo Johnson called "I Want a Dog,"
But you don't like dogs.
which, but I want a dog. He's basically talking about how he wants this perfect life, and it all starts with getting a dog, which is something simple, which will bring you happiness. So I'm listening to Hobo once again. These guys called the Unlikely Candidates, and their single called High Low, as well as the single by One Republic called Better Days, which is very hopeful. It's definitely like a lockdown type of song meant to like lift the spirits. And I'm also listening to one of Juice WRLD's tracks called PTSD, which is one of the last few like Juice WRLD tracks out there. New ones, that is.
Once again, a very interesting set of music you've been listening to. I've been listening
What you listening to?
Nothing new. Probably the things I'm listening to we've already mentioned. I'm listening to Jacob Collier, which is a music artist. He does many different genres and is widely seen in the music community as being one of the most innovative musicians to have ever lived modern day.
Really?
Because he does things with music that like I can't even explain. It's remarkable. And I think he's like in his 20s, the young 20s. Other than that, I've been listening to Drake's album, and I want to say a final review on it. And I do believe that it's second to none other than More Life. It's quite good. I'm very happy with it.
I don't know. I want to listen to Chicago Freestyle and Time Flies. Off that.
That's pretty much my favorites as well. But the album itself is not bad.
Yeah. Interesting thing about music. I was watching. There's this YouTube video. It's like 41 minutes long, and it's about how pop has changed.
I have watched this. Was it
since 2010?
Is it a Vox? Not Vox.
No, it's not a Vox thing. It's by this just a random YouTuber, and it's a video essay, and you're finding like the 13 most influential albums that completely changed the face of pop music. Like they introduced new sounds, and it features things like Lana Del Rey's 2013 album, The Weeknd, and it features like even Justin Bieber's the what's the one where it's What Do You Mean's on? What's that album name? I don't know.
Why do you think I would know that?
I don't know. Maybe you'd like Justin Bieber. Anyway,
Justin Bieber, but Ed Sheeran. Those are the two people that I despise. Probably
it's a really solid
probably
musician.
Great people. I don't like their music.
They make great music. I love it. I don't know Justin that much, but it got me thinking. The point is, it got me thinking about who do I think is probably like the greatest new voice from 2010s, right? Or like that came up in the 2010s. And I think Tyler Joseph, 21 Pilots, I think they are definitely one of the best voices to come out from the 2010s. I think Tyler, well, they started in 2009, but they came up obviously in the 2010s. And I think Tyler Joseph, he can rap really well, he can sing really well, he writes all his own stuff.
I have to go
plays multiple instruments, produces
Ariana Grande, because she's got like, I think it's a 2, 3, or maybe even 4 octave vocal range. She's a
that's true, but she doesn't do what Tyler does. She doesn't make her music alone from top to bottom, and maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, but you have to respect the fact that Tyler he wrote as a single credit on the songs Stressed Out and Heathen. He had 2 number 1s on the Billboard, and I think he's one of 5 people in the entire decade who were number ones, and they were the only artist, the only person to write it. Like one person wrote that song. That's kind of amazing. If you think about it, because songs these days are made by community. So
Hmm. Well, that's great and all, but as always, I'm not that much of a fan of lyrics in the first place. I kind of
yeah,
lyrics are an afterthought for me. Um,
lyrics is what it's all about. What you watching?
what am I
Movies and
watching?
series. We have to focus on the words.
LMAO. Listen, so I've been watching series mostly with my parents. Before I tell you, okay, hold on. Firstly, got my parents hooked on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's a brilliant series. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. That's all I want to say about that. It's hilarious, quirky, corny, my favorite. Can we talk about 13 Reasons Why, please? Because I watched it, season 3 and
Yeah,
4.
I also finished it last week.
It's one of those things where when I heard they were doing a series 3, I mean a series 3, I've been talking about Apple Watches. My daddy wants one.
My dad too.
After they did season 2, I thought, no, season 3, you are pulling straws out of a hat. You are dragging this too far, but
I mean, they were.
it's so good though.
They were.
It's
No,
when you watch
actually,
it, you realize they needed to do that.
I respect it because there's a lot of shows. I mean, shows will always start with a single premise, and then as they go on, they'll outgrow the premise, right?
Yeah.
That's just the way all shows are, and not all shows can actually come up with new quality content after the original premise that got everyone hooked is over. And I think the way 13 Reasons Why did it, each season tackled new political issues. I think they did pretty well. So I have to respect it. A show, I know you haven't watched it, but a show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., for example, I think did it poorly. Where their first season had a really solid premise, and everything after that was just like they're making it up as they go along, and it's horrible. So I think 13 Reasons Why, for that reason, I take my hats off.
It's actually really good, I have to say, and it really sums up the series as a whole.
Season 4 or 3?
I think 3 was necessary, but 4 tied all the knots, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. That being said, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I spoke about, and Modern Family has LGBT content, of course, right? And I think it's very much necessary. I can actually honestly say that my father enjoys these 2 series so much that I feel like it's making it a lighter, not so negative connotation type of thing for him. Like a lot of older generations have negative connotations towards the LGBT community, and I think he's a changed man. So I think we need more of that.
That's great. I think I've mentioned it, but I have no problem with LGBT so representation in shows. I just don't like it when that's the only single defining character trait of that character.
Yes, of course, yeah.
I don't like that misrepresentation. But I mean, something like 13 Reasons Why they tackled LGBT in season 4 very well.
Yeah, quite nicely.
And it was great. Quite nicely, quite respectfully, and actually just good.
The toxic relationships that some of them had.
Like Zach just goes from being the nicest guy to complete waste man in 0.5 seconds.
Yeah.
You go
such a mood though.
It's crazy. Also, spoiler alert, I'm gonna spoil the like a very big thing.
Block your ears.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Justin's death.
What?
I just as a med student, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? If you go untreated with HIV, it takes about 5 years to develop AIDS, and then 5 to 8 years, and then if you have AIDS, it can be 1 to 2 years before you die. That's if you get no treatment at all, right?
Yeah.
He was on the streets in the time of the show, maybe a year, 2 years prior to when season 4 aired, right? And I'm just struggling to believe that he could just deteriorate so quickly. I really am.
Maybe he had a
Um,
condition, like a rare condition that just
dude,
accelerated it.
and the amount of, he's got bacteria here, he's got bacteria there. What bacteria, bro? What?
Bacteria is
It's just
bacteria
like
is
he's
bacteria,
getting
same
worse.
thing.
Listen, can I tell you an interesting fact that you probably didn't know that this? He's doctor in that episode, right? In the last episode. In the series Grey's Anatomy, Meredith Grey, the main character, her mother's Ellis Grey. Ellis Grey, the woman who plays Ellis Grey, played Justin's doctor. And I
What?
found that as a nice little... I see. And the funny thing is, in Grey's Anatomy, everyone goes on about Ellis Grey because she always saved the patient. She didn't lose a patient, whatever. No one died on the table. And yeah, she couldn't save Justin, and I was just disappointed.
But she's kind of like, he's
Just,
not my patient. I'm just looking after him. I mean, he only came in.
he's not a surgical patient. He's not surgical, so I can't save him. Like,
other than that, to wrap off movies and series, I've been interested in Space Force and this, which has got what's his name? Can't even think.
Steve Carell.
Yeah, Steve Carell.
Steve.
And it's actually made by the same people that made The Office. I think he made The Office.
Ooh.
And the trailer made it look cool, but
Not great.
Not great at all.
It sounds like The Irishman.
I need to check it out. Then there's a show called Special Correspondent. It's not a new show. I think it came out 2017. But it's got Ricky Gervais, and it looks very interesting, and it's quite funny. Ricky Gervais is one of my favorite comics because he does non-politically correct comedy. Other than that,
Have you heard of this movie called The Irishman?
I have.
Okay, so for those who don't know, The Irishman is a Best Picture by the Oscars, nominated film by Martin Scorsese. It has a runtime of 3 hours and 29 minutes.
Which is why I haven't watched it yet.
Right? It's the longest film I've ever sat through. And I'm just like, but why? Like, it's not that the movie is bad, right? I can see why people like it. I will admit I'm not a big Mafia fan, like of Mafia films. But like, if your runtime is going to be 3 hours and 29 minutes, there has to be like a model at the end of the story. You know what I mean? Something that can take away. And it's just like, nah, bruh. It's like, sit down for 3.5 hours and just take in the story. That in it will not change your life at all. So that was disappointing.
The Titanic is also quite a long movie. How long is it? Do you know?
Titanic is 3 hours though. Like in Titanic, if you watch it, it's 3 hours long. You don't feel bored. You watch Avengers Endgame, 3 hours long. You don't feel bored. You watch this 3.5 hours. You feel bored. There are times you feel bored. There's a whole 5-minute scene dedicated to them talking about why you should not put fish in the back seat of your car. I'm like, why is this in the film? Why?
What do you mean fish?
Like this one character buys a fish, puts it in the backseat of his car, and then takes it out, and then all the characters get back in the car and like, this car smells like fish. And he's like, yeah, I put the fish in the backseat. And he's like, why would you do that? And then they have a discussion about why you should put fish in the trunk of the car and not the backseat of the car, because it's going to make your car smell. And no one likes the smell of fish. And then they argue about what kind of fish it was, because was it a cod? Was it this? Or was it that? And I'm like, this isn't even funny. Why is this here?
Maybe it's pure artwork. The videography and the film and the film work is probably what makes it.
When I talk about art, that film has actually really good visual effects. So I'm not sure even now how they do de-aging, but normally it involves like putting a whole mocap like face thing on with like dots and cameras and special lighting and things like that, and then they digitally de-age someone's face. You can see it in movies like Captain America, with the Winter Soldier, or whatever. But this film, they de-age them with no extra gear or soft or anything like that. They just used infrared cameras to capture the data for the de-aging, which is really amazing.
You see, it's got its perks.
But 3.5 hours. Okay, we'll
one
move
movie
on.
I wish I was longer. John Wick 3 ended on a damn cliffhanger. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on.
Glenn, what can you teach me?
Okay. Do you know what asthma is?
Mother's had it. Younger brother has it.
We all know what asthma is,
Yeah.
right? We don't actually know what causes asthma. We don't know how asthma comes about. We know that
There's
it's something to
nothing
do
I
with the immune
hate
system.
more than when doctors say, we don't know why this happens.
We generally do not know why. Like, we know that your body suddenly becomes hypersensitive to certain triggers, whether it be grass, pollen, freshly cut grass, or pollen, or dust, or whatever. But we don't know what exactly causes you to suddenly get that trigger, right?
Yeah.
So there is a couple of hypotheses though dedicated to this. One of them is called the hygiene hypothesis. So to give some context, if you look at someone in the city and you look at the rural environment, the people in the rural areas rarely have asthma or any form of hypersensitive disease. In other words, your immune system has a problem. They barely have asthma in the rural areas, but there's a large amount of asthma in the urban areas. So the question is why? And the argument goes that, okay, people who live on farms, they're exposed to a whole bunch of pathogens. People who live in urban areas are not exposed to the pathogens, etc., etc. But the hygiene hypothesis says that we live in urban areas. We clean our homes, we remove all the dust, we remove all the bacteria from our kitchen tables, and we get rid of all the germs. And because we do that, we actually make our bodies weaker. So the hygiene hypothesis states that because your mother wants to have a clean house, she's making your immune system worse.
I love that. I love that a lot.
Tell that to your mom and your mom when they tell you that your room is a mess. Just say, I want a strong immune system.
I don't want to die.
So
please.
I don't want to die. So the hygiene hypothesis basically states that, in urban areas, we clean our environment so much that we actually reduce the amount of pathogens we're exposed to, and that causes hypersensitivity. Also, you know how babies like to put their mouths in their hands?
Yeah.
It's apparently an evolutionary thing where they want to expose their bodies to new pathogens so they can build immunity. So they put their hands in their mouths because your GIT, your gastrointestinal system, is really good at detecting pathogens. So that's why they put their hands in their mouths. It's to become stronger.
So don't stop your kids from putting their hands in their mouths.
No. But within the reason.
My younger brother once picked up the drain plugs and when he was quite young, and he put it in his mouth and he ended up in hospital. So don't necessarily go wild.
Don't just necessarily do that. But the hygiene hypothesis I thought was pretty interesting because I come from a house where we clean a lot, and cleanliness is important. But I just think to myself, maybe this has made me weaker, as much as it has made me stronger.
Sure.
That is my medical interesting learning. I want to take it back to film for a second. I know there's a lot of film talk. But I genuinely am excited about this. And it's LED screens.
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't sound that amazing. We've all seen massive LED screens at your local mall where they play the rugby on as LED screen, or you go to H&M, they always have a massive screen playing ads. That's an LED screen. Example.
Have you ever been to a concert or something?
Ever been to a concert? Any super massive screen that you're like, this is definitely not a TV, LED screen, except for at the movies, which is projectors. So in film, right, if you want to do special effects, for the longest time since the first Star Wars film, we've been using blue screens and green screens, right?
Yeah.
And then we use computers to take out the blue and the green and replace it with a different background. We use green and blue screens to remove people in the backgrounds. We use green and blue screens to, if you have someone that is disabled, maybe they have an amputated leg, often they'll wrap the actor's leg in a green screen or a blue screen to remove it late in post. But there are many problems with having a green and blue screen. Namely, this thing called spilling, right? So often, you have to really light up those screens. They have to be super bright. There can't be any shadows on the green screen or the blue screen. And so that tends to spill onto the actors when they wear something shiny. So if you watch the Marvel films, a problem they always face is Captain America's shield is very, very reflective. So there's sometimes what happens is the green screen actually spills onto the shield and they have to remove it in post. And many other things like that. But they started this thing in the Star Wars land using LED screens, right? like actual LED screens that actually make the background live there or live, right? And it's powered by, have you heard of Unreal Engine?
Sounds familiar.
So there's a company called Epic Games. They make a
That
whole bunch
sounds
of
familiar.
games. And they have this gaming engine called Unreal Engine. So it's a mixture of the gaming world meeting the forming world coming together to create realistic environments. And the reason I'm excited about LED screens is because if you watch something like The Mandalorian, which is this new Star Wars show, the Mandalorian wears a very shiny armor and is highly reflective and reflects a lot of light. And the LEDs, if they use green screen, it would be such a problem because you have to remove so much green that's been reflected off him in post. But with LED screens, they can turn the brightness up, and you can, if they have like a forest in the background, then the light of the forest will reflect onto the clothing and things like that, which is really cool. Or like how there's a scene in the movie Solo, a Star Wars story, where they jump to hyperspace. And normally they use a blue screen for that, and then they fake the lighting on the actors, right? They like shine blue light into the actors, but because the hyperspace is blue. But now they just use the LED screen, and they could real time get realistic shadows and lighting and variances using LED screens. So it's very exciting. Just Google some more on LED movie screens. There's my rant done.
Great. Now, tech update. I miss
Tech update.
Windows Phone.
Why?
Because I had a Windows Phone. I had a Nokia Lumia. And honestly,
They suck.
no, they did not. They didn't suck when they were new. In fact,
That 42 megapixel camera though.
when they
on the
were
Lumia
when
1020.
Nokia Lumia was at its peak around 2013, 14, 15, they were Apple iPhone's biggest competition. And the reason why they failed is because Microsoft was charging people to use Windows Phone, of course, and nobody wanted to develop apps for Windows Store. But I think I just loved it so much, and I loved Nokia Lumias as well. Brilliant phones.
The home screen was interesting. I will admit the whole design was very interesting. If you didn't want something like Android and iPhones are very similar in the design, but Nokia Lumia is actually something that's very different.
Yeah, what I liked about
lot
it
of
is
ways.
it's the closest thing to order that you get without having an iPhone. And that's why I really liked it. And they're more affordable in many cases. But other than that, I just miss it, and it's died off pretty much, and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
It did.
Yeah, it's dead. Anyway, WWDC, which is Apple's worldwide developer conference, where they release mainly software updates, what's to come, that sort of thing. And you might think, software updates, that's boring, but it's the possibility of your entire iPhone changing the way it works. Like, that's the possibility. Like, it's a big thing.
And how you interact with something.
Yeah.
That's so important. Your phone, your laptop, your iPad,
100%.
your watch, whatever it is you own.
I'm really excited. It's in 1 day and 19 hours, give or take. Are you going to be watching with me live?
I will probably be watching live because I care about WWDC. I'm also always excited about it because, there's not much innovation. Like, you won't see anything super new anymore in hardware, right?
Yeah.
But software, there's the options are endless. You can do so much. It just takes creativity. And I think Apple is a very creative company in that sense. Yeah. They tend to offer features that you actually use. Like Android offers a lot of features. Many things you can do with your phone, but you don't use all of them.
Remember the 360-degree camera that you used to get? Or the ability to take video front and back. Like, nobody used that really.
Yeah, it's cool stuff to have. Or like there's a feature on Samsung phones where you can swipe across the screen to take a screenshot. Like swipe your palm across it. Or there's things like face detection where it could turn the phone, make sure the phone doesn't turn off you looking at it. But various features that don't actually work 100% of the time, so you don't really use it.
Especially the face
Whereas
detection.
I feel like especially so when Apple comes up with a feature, it's like, this is gonna work, and this is actually gonna I can actually use this and this can actually better my life, which is I always find exciting.
Yeah, a lot of people complain, Apple, they take too long to implement these features, but I'd rather wait for them to release it and do it properly, to be honest with you, because then I know I'm actually going to
It's
use it.
perfecting it.
What's cool for WWDC this time around is it's going to be a completely online. There will not be an actual audience, and that's what I'm actually most interested in. I want to see how they're going to do this. And what's even more interesting is for the first time watching it live, we'll have the same experience that everyone else around the world is having. How cool is that?
Yeah, we're all gonna learn at the same time.
Yeah,
All gonna learn.
I'm excited.
But what are some of your like from last year's iOS 13? What is like your most used feature?
I mean, I suppose dark mode is the thing I use the most.
Of course.
Because that just does its thing. iPad OS.
For me, about on iOS, I love dark mode, of course, but the lyrics feature in Apple Music,
Well, it's
underrated.
cool. It's cool. It is
It's cool,
underrated.
but I use it. I'm just saying, like, I use it a lot.
Huawei phone users are
More than I
going,
thought.
we've had this for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, shut up.
I know. I must 3D touch though every day.
I don't. Never had it. I've got haptic touch.
Shame.
No, the audience does not know what we are talking about. Anyway, moving on to our uni update. 1, 2, 3. Oof! Yeah, I know it's 60K. Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. We're doing that from now on. How is online uni going?
It's going. That's all I can say.
Good. It's not going on my side.
Why not?
I've been fighting my lecturers since the beginning of online classes, and they have not budged. There's always going to be kids who thrive and kids who don't, and so long as there are some kids who are thriving, they don't care about the kids who are struggling. So,
yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I'm. You know what? I also know that I'm not alone. I've been speaking to our friends from Stellenbosch, and I've been like, I'm gonna shout out.
Our friends, what's the friends?
I'm gonna shout out at. Okay, never mind.
At who?
Never mind. I've been speaking to friends from all different varsities, and
ladies and gentlemen, I had no idea Hector had friends. I'm gonna be honest.
Okay, fine. Shots. Fine, I like that. I don't like that. Point is, everyone's struggling. Like a lot of people are struggling. And varsities don't care. So, don't go to university. I'm kidding. Go to university. But don't go during lockdown because you will die.
I don't know if that's the right message to put out.
That's the message I'm putting out. If you are an average
that's
person,
the message you're putting out.
Don't go to varsity during lockdown.
I like to think I'm not. It's definitely more difficult, but I think I'm doing okay. But I recognize that a lot of our class is like helping each other, trying to get through this. It's like a real community. I felt more connected to my class through my cell phone than when we actually in the lecture theater, which is interesting. Do you wonder? The dogs are going crazy.
I'm gonna.
Who let the dogs out?
I took them for a walk. I think it was 2 days ago. And I felt so in love with them. So cute. So obedient. Now I want to kill them again. And that's love for you. One day you look at them and you're just like, you are the best thing ever. And the next day you're like, I'm going to kill you. That's love. Now
that is a beautiful quote. We should use that in the promos.
Wonderful. Balancing your life. Tell me how you do this.
I don't think I live the most balanced life. But I think I do mix like school downtime and things like podcasting and workouts pretty well. I think from day to day, I think I mostly base my day around the workout. So I know if I'm gonna work out in the morning, then I can change my day around that. Or if I'm working out in the evening, and what kind of workout will determine how the rest of my day looks and what I do. So it starts there.
I don't
Yes.
think I'd be able to work out as much as I do if we were still at varsity right now. It's knowing that I don't have to commute anywhere and knowing that I do things in my own time, I can fit in an entire hour and a half.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Plus, my sleeping schedule has never been better. Okay,
Yeah.
not so much the
Yeah.
schedule, but the number of hours I'm getting. Never
Yes.
been better.
Yeah, I was talking to my mom about it the other day. I was just like, when we were at uni, I'd only be able to fit in a 6K, a 30-minute run, because anything longer than that, it's like we're encroaching upon the time. We didn't have the time to do anything longer than 30 minutes, right? Or so maybe even an hour, but you can't like do an hour every single day. Whereas now it's like I can do an hour of exercise and I can still sleep 8 hours, which is amazing because we're at home and there's no traffic, no commuting time, which is brilliant.
Yeah. I was saying I didn't want to talk about it that much, but I I I miss normal. I knew I was broken. I know this isn't exactly uni related. I knew I was broken when I thought about the grocery store that I normally used to go to every day, and I missed going to the grocery store. For those that stay in the southern suburbs, Rosmead Avenue, Spa, that it's different. I
Yo,
haven't
that's it
I
different.
haven't been there in so long, and I felt so sad when I drove past it the other day. We've been going for
Dude.
these drives where we don't get out of the car, but we just wanna go have a look around the city, see what people are doing. Um,
Yeah. What are people doing?
they're not wearing masks and they are not social distancing.
Agreed. I was running this morning. And the runners just completely decided to leave their masks at home. Not even have a mask. Put the mask on your chin and then run like that. Just have no mask at all. And I was like, what is going on here? Actually.
Like I can partially understand if they don't have it over their nose or they put it on the chin because when you're working out with that mask on, it really uh gets hot and uncomfortable. Uh
Suffer for health.
That's you and your discipline. It's gonna be the death of you.
Listen, I wear my mask and I'm trying. It's not just for me, it's for you also.
I also wear my
You know,
mask,
that's what I think as a
but when
runner.
there's no one around me, I put it under my nose because I need to breathe cold
You
air.
two workers at home, why are you wearing a mask?
Sometimes I just told you I took the dogs for a walk. I do these walks all the time.
Oh my gosh, you're making it sound like you do this all the time
I
to the
do take
audience.
walks all
No,
the time.
you do it like once a week.
That's fine. That's all the time.
Oh my god, you're so dramatic.
I
To the
work out
audience,
an
I
hour
run
and a
3 to
half
4 times a
every
week.
single day in my room. I'm going to kill you! I work out an hour and a half
That's
every
a horrible soundbite to
single
have.
day in this very room that I'm recording this podcast. And you know what? I actually want to say I'm actually seeing results after a month of strength training.
What are the results? What are you seeing exactly?
The abdominals are starting to show themselves, friend, and my arms
Yeah.
are increasing in size.
How do you know the increasing in size? Did you do some measurements?
I've taken pictures, and it's noticeable in the pictures.
Great. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you,
I
friend.
too am getting stronger and faster.
Wonderful.
Which is great. It's health.
I hear you running yourself to death
I ran a 12K.
today.
Today. I ran a 12K. I'm not gonna lie. I feel a little lightheaded.
Yeah.
And
Karant and I were having
think
this heated debate last night about motivation versus discipline and how you shouldn't
we'll
focus
save
on
that for another.
motivation and
We'll save
focus
it for
on
another
discipline.
podcast.
Yes, but you're gonna kill yourself if you keep running
I'm not.
so aggressively.
Look, it's just because I decided to do a morning run, which means I had no fuel. But I usually do afternoon runs, and then I do have fuel, and that kind of threw me off. You know, the lack of some food in my body.
Speaking of fuel, I'm hungry. let's get this over and done with, because we're actually running over time, hey? Because we've
Oh, yeah.
got a big
Oh, damn.
we've got a big main topic. Basically, to sum up the uni update, Kalant is thriving because he's got a community, and everyone else is not thriving. Everyone else. Now, our main topic today is something that's been quite ripe on social media quite recently, and it shouldn't be something that's trending or something that we only speak about occasionally. But due to some recent events, it's caused people to go, how can we still be faced with this issue today? And people are making a lot of noise about it, and it's about time. The topic today is racism.
Yes.
Yes. And we're gonna give you. We have actually we've got some guests planned to come on for this episode for the first time. This is technically season 2 of this podcast, and all that means is we're just changing some things. We're gonna try and have guests on for this season, and in order to get into that part of the episode today, we're gonna go over some definitions. Go for it. Start us off.
I think you're doing this.
I'll
do the next part.
Okay, fine.
Do the whole thing.
So, very easily, or not so easily actually, there are many different forms of racism. There's individual racism, which has it's an individual based racist assumption that people have against other people. Individual racism is the sort of thing where it's a very clear daylight robbery type of thing. You can see it happening before your eyes. But the things that we don't talk about, and that is more prominent and happens every day, is systemic or institutionalized racism. They're similar, not necessarily this exact same thing, but it's basically policies and practices that exclude or promote different groups. So basically, take for example, if your company says you must have straight hair, for example, that's one way. That's kind of systemic racism, because it says that's the norm, and if you don't have that kind of hair, that's a problem, and that's a form of discrimination. That's just a random example. Microaggressions. This happens all the time. It's ways of speaking not meant to necessarily offend or directly attack individuals, but it is still derogatory, implies exclusion, and belittles those individuals. For example, you might tell someone, "Oh, you are quite articulated. You are well spoken," or "There's only one race, the human race," and it's kind of like how you try to be nice to someone, but it's like a backhanded compliment kind of thing. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's so well ingrained. It's so ingrained into our society and the way we live that we don't even recognize them as microaggressions.
Yeah.
Sometimes something like "you are well spoken" for most people might seem like a compliment, but it's actually a microaggression.
Yeah. So why are we bringing this up, Grant? Why this topic?
So this topic is birthed out of the killing of George Floyd. So George Floyd was an American man who was, at the age of 46, was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota during an arrest for allegedly using a counterfeit ball. This is on May 25th, 2020. The biggest thing about the Floyd death is that a police officer stood on his neck, or kneeled on his neck, for 9 minutes, and Floyd was screaming, "I can't breathe." Since then, the police officers have been arrested and charged with murder, and his death has caused many uprisings and many protests throughout not only America but all across the world. And this has once again reignited the Black Lives Matter movement, which is basically talking about how we should protect Black lives because they are most in danger. We also want to bring it into a South African context in today's conversation. Tuesday was Youth Day, And Youth Day is an important day because in 1976 there was the Soweto uprising, in which students stood up against the apartheid government about Bantu education. It was Bantu education, for those who don't know, was a different system, an inferior system of education given to people of color, mostly black people, by the apartheid government. And the whole point of Bantu education was to keep black people uneducated and use that as a reason for why they cannot progress economically. So to shed some light on this, we have some guests today. We have Mr. Christopher Williamson, we have Liam Erasmus, Naomi Boswell, and Asande Vilane. I think
we're going to head over to that call now.
To head over to that call now.
So I apologize for the change in audio quality. We've just switched over to our Zoom call. We were going to post the video on YouTube, but we have some objections. What I would like to do first and foremost, is I want to introduce our very wonderful guests. Let's start with Liam Erasmus. Introduce yourself.
Hello. As you might have heard, my name is Liam Erasmus. I study BAccLLB, it's accounting and law at Stellenbosch University. I'm an ambassador for a organization called Progress SA, which advocates for academic freedom. And as Youngster once said, I'm a Kaapstad.
Wonderful. First time stop for the day.
Gonna have to bleep that.
Let's do a Sunday.
Hey everyone. So as you heard again, my name is Asande. I'm a medical student and I also run a blog that's focused on a lot of current affairs stuff. I actually have my own podcast, so maybe you'll find the link to that in the description. Also available on Apple and Spotify and Anchor. And what else is there about me? That's pretty much the main things. You can follow me on Instagram at Asande Vilane.
Wonderful. Short and sweet. Christopher.
Hi. So I'm Christopher, obviously. I am a student at the University of Cape Town. I'm studying towards a BA in English, Afrikaans, and psychology. And I'm also a Gerwel Candidate Fellow, studying towards my PGCE, which is a postgraduate certificate in education. So future teacher. Yeah.
Wonderful. And last, certainly not least, Naomi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Naomi, as you heard. I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Cape Town. Sorry, this sounds like a patient-student intro, but that's the way we roll. I'm also an avid poet, especially slam poetry, and it's been many years since I've written slam poetry on race, but maybe you'll catch a snippet of that today. We'll see what we'll see.
That sounds...
I don't know about you, Tiavis, but I feel highly underqualified to be here right now.
As per usual, we are not qualified to talk about these things, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yes.
So that's obviously Matthew Gallant. That's his voice. You may have heard it before. I'm Matthew Hector, as you have heard, up to date, up to this point. If you're ready, we'll jump straight into the topics that we want to speak to you guys about today. And the first question is, should we follow American protests? Wake up on the call of Americans as South Africans. And what do I mean by this? Well, the whole sort of trend that people are on now about speaking out about racism, unfortunately, it has become a trend. It shouldn't, but it has been. And it's sparked by George Floyd and this sort of new spike in the Black Lives Matter movement. And as South Africans, we've also seemed to have jumped on this trend. So so should we be following Americans? Why can't we make a platform for ourselves, especially a country with our unfortunately rich history? Anybody want to jump on it first? Go for it.
I have something to say on that. So I think as much as people are interpreting this whole thing as us jumping on the back of an American trend, I think it kind of depends on how the person who's posting this content interprets the Black Lives Matter movement. Because if they're seeing it as, oh, this is horrible, and I'm just going to post because everyone's posting about it, then I can see the problem. But if you look at what Black Lives Matter stands for, it's more systemic racism. And as much as this started from America, it did touch like a lot of sensitive points with people around the world. So I don't think we should kind of fall into the trap of saying it's a trend, in which case we silence people who are actually genuine. Because I think it depends more on the intentions of the individual who's posting the content, you know what I mean?
100%.
Because there's been a lot of movements fighting like racism in South African schools. Like we saw Bishop School in Cape Town, like they marched and they gave like their executives like the whole thing. So I think for them it was more like it had been happening for all these years, and suddenly when it exploded, it kind of gave them some leverage to say this is an issue and you have it too. So I think it's very like double-edged sword vibes.
100%.
Yeah. Can I
Go
deliver? My yeah, and I also think that if you look at history, people struggles in other parts of the world has always affected all the other parts. I mean, if you looking at something like the Defiance campaign in South Africa, that was used a lot in the non-racial, the non-violent protests that's into our own struggle. So I don't think that this is a particularly new trend, because the struggle for liberation is a universal language.
Okay, I 100% agree with you there. Shall we leave it at that? Naomi, do you want to comment? Christopher?
My understanding of it is that at the moment, the Black Lives Matter movement is something that was, as you said before, sparked by, the sudden awareness of police brutality against people of color in America. It wasn't necessarily that those crimes weren't already being committed, but it was more that things were being brought to the public eye in a much more intense and frequent manner. It was like bam, 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 bam. We're going to hit you with the fact that this has been happening the whole time and you're going to be aware of it. And the thing is that I read this brilliant article on Black forgiveness and the issue of silence. And the thing is that in America, historically, there has always been a lot of, silence on issues of racism and not acknowledging that they exist. It goes back to during the time of apartheid here in South Africa, America being like, we denounce South Africa and we're not going to support them because they're racist, and we're not racist. Meanwhile, back home on their home turf in America, these kinds of things were also being perpetuated the entire time. And the thing is, after apartheid ended in South Africa, ended in South Africa, let's put that one in quotations. We had the Truth and Reconciliation Committee.
That was the end of racism, right?
and so we had initiatives like the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and we had people being like, the silence has to end, and the people who committed these atrocities have to own up to the fact that they committed these atrocities, and we cannot continue to sweep them under the carpet. Whereas historically in America and in the UK and in most, colonial countries and, situations, it's been a thing of history is written by the victors. And history says that because white people are the victors, they didn't do anything wrong. And for the most part, it's been this continued history of silence. These things have always been happening. It's just coming to the fore right now. And the issue with trying to look at Black Lives Matter, which has its very American context, and applying it to the South African context, is that for us, we did try and, get rid of the silence. We did try and root out all of the things that happened. However, the way that we went about it was such that anyone who told the truth about the atrocities that they committed under apartheid had to be given amnesty. They had to be given forgiveness. And the thing is, we have this continual perpetuation of white people saying they're sorry and people of color having to forgive them. And that's what's been perpetuated in South Africa. And the thing is, in America, what they're trying to do, like what I've understood them to be trying to do with Black Lives Matter, is that they do not want to have to forgive anymore. And I think that that ideal of no longer having to forgive the people who have wronged you, because actually it's really not okay, is something that we genuinely do need in South Africa. And that level of ideal, I think, that's the kind of thing that we should also, get onto if that's going to be the trend. However, I think we also need to be very careful in looking at, what's going on in our own country. But I mean, I'll get to that later. But yeah, that's my stance on America versus us.
That was like a whole 3 minutes of truth bombs. Just want to say, like the truth bombs just followed each other. I was like, whoa.
I just want to pose a question here. So we're talking about severity, how bad racism in one country versus another one. So I want to know, so just some numbers. The Black population in America is 13.4%. They're clearly a minority. In South Africa, the Black population is 80.48%, a clear majority. Do you think the fact that we're still arguing about race and still fighting for freedom, to destroy race, a fact that it's still a tragedy, that we have to do more of a tragedy than America, for example?
Jump on it if you want to say something. Go for it.
I don't want to speak too much, but I made notes for this because I'm a nerd. So yeah.
Love that.
So basically, I think that it isn't necessarily more of a tragedy. I think that it's a tragedy in the context that us as the world in general are still needing to fight for this to this day. It's like every time we thought, okay, it's done, we've won, we no longer need to fight for everybody to actually have the same rights as everybody else. We turn around and we realize, actually, no, we were wrong. It's been 20 years of a democracy that never existed. Né? So, I mean, the issue in South Africa is that systemic racism is so normalized. Like, we think that we're past it because we're so used to it. It's one of those things where you'll see poor Black people and you will see the situations in the township, and it doesn't even faze people anymore. Like, it's a thing where, as you said, 80% of our population is Black and versus the only 13% of the population in America. So the thing is, when things happen to people in America, they're like, oh, it's because they're the minority. And that's how those things are allowed to happen, because they don't have as big a voice. But the fact of the matter is, even though there are so many Black voices in South Africa, they are being silenced because the voices that we are aware of and the voices that we see are voices of people who are the lucky few. Like, I think as a country, we see people of color in power, people like our president, the people who make up the political parties that are currently in power in South Africa. And we think, okay, they're people of color, so the plight of people of color can't actually be that bad. It really can't. Meanwhile, what people fail to notice is that despite the fact that apartheid ended 20 years ago, the great majority of people of color in this country are still living in exactly the same, if not worse, conditions as they were 20 years ago. And because they're in those situations, they can't accurately give voice to their own struggles. And the people that you do see that are in power are the lucky few. And because of that, we're not able to accurately, get an idea of how bad the situation actually is, because we have, skewed ideas of the level to which people are actually suffering in our own country.
I want to add to what Naomi said. So she touched on something by saying that the people in color who are people of color, the people in power who are people of color are the lucky few. And for me, like, what I got from your question on the whole minority versus majority and still experiencing racism was by saying that because a population of a country is majority, you kind of extrapolating that they're also in power and that other systemic forms of racism have been abolished. And we kind of ignore that the majority of the frameworks in this country haven't really changed much from when apartheid was abolished. So I think that even though we're a majority, you can say it's a tragedy in that way. I don't think we should get carried away by thinking that because people of color majority, they should suddenly have the gates to freedom and everything is fine. Because I think it ignores the fact that the frameworks that exist in society are pretty much unchanged.
That's true. So we're going to move on to the next point, talking about freedoms and frameworks. 44 years ago, there was a Soweto uprising, where students obviously they were tired of the bunch education. They wanted a fair education. They wanted something that they could use to build a future. And when I spoke to a member who was part of the Soweto uprising, they were telling us they managed to mobilize people without social media, cell phones, anything like that, and managed to keep it hush hush and really build a protest out of like which seems impossible today. So I want to know, why is it that we haven't seen such a massive revolt against injustice like racism since then? If they could do it back then with like less the resources that we have now in terms of like social media and communication and mobilizing people and getting a voice out there, why haven't we done that like since? And why has it not been effective? You know?
I think it's a couple of things. The one thing that I do think is the difference is racism today is much more pernicious than it was back then. So back then in the 1970s or throughout apartheid, you had specific signs that said, you are not allowed here if your hair is too thick, you know, like you literally could see the racism. Whereas today, often it is much more veiled and much more, okay, you are allowed here, but find your own transport. You have to find your own job to, get here, even though you live so far from the city center where all the resources are. And it's very difficult to tackle something like that when you can't see it as easily. And as was mentioned earlier, the people who are in power are people of color. They look like you, but still you don't see much done. So it's sort of this break between what people thought democracy would look like and what it actually is looking like. And it's very difficult for people to mobilize when they can't really see what the enemy is. And that's, I think, also distinguishes us from America, where the cops that are beating people up, and killing people like Collins Nkosi, they look like him. It's very difficult to bring those two ideas together. And so when you speak about uprising, then people are like, uprise against who? Against Cyril Ramaphosa, who looks like me, or against Julius Malema, who represents the third biggest party in our parliament. Like, these people are on my side, but somehow, this is still the status quo. And that definitely needs to be rectified, because the system in which we operate isn't necessarily for helping the majority. It's even though we have a lot of mechanisms to solve structural inequality, like broad-based Black economic empowerment, employment equity, and all these land development programs, it only often helps an elite few. I mean, I like this book that I once read. It's from 2007. It's called "Is It Just Me or Is Everything Cuck?" And it basically speaks about how Cyril Ramaphosa went from, when he was on the boards of a bunch of companies, he went from one board meeting to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, all because Black economic empowerment often only helps a politically connected few. And there are few, people that are, few Black people that are holding on to, or rather benefiting from this mechanism that's supposed to, help the majority of the population, but are actually, benefiting themselves and the ones who they are connected to. And that is one of the things that I feel is causing the rut that we are in now, that people are not rising up because they don't see the enemy, and they see that there's a crime that was committed, but they don't see the criminal.
100% agree with you. Anybody else want to touch on that?
I kind of want to touch on this, but I want to keep it like very short, sharp, and simple. So in terms of, I think the original question was something like, why haven't we seen an uprising on that scale, even though we have the tools to facilitate it, like social media and other things like that? And I think you kind of need to look at, I don't know, it's like, I think the narrative around violence is very dangerous. Like, how there were the protests in America and people were framing them as like these violent, bad people. And I think a lot of people try to avoid that, especially when it's like, I think people think that when you have a democracy, suddenly you can kind of vote to fix things, and it doesn't really work that way. So I think because South Africa is now like a democracy in name, people are more like, why should I be violent and uprising and other things if I can just cast a vote or do this or like write a letter to such and such a person, even though those things actually, they fail sometimes because government doesn't really want to listen. So I think people are more in this mindset of this is a democracy, so we shouldn't like be violent, whatever. Whereas back then it was, they didn't even have the bare human rights that they should have had. So I think the difference in the way the government operated and how people interpreted that also affects how readily people are willing to get out into the streets and say, this is what I believe.
Can I add on?
Yes.
It's also like, what do you see as a modern uprising? Do we still need to go onto the streets to show that we want change anymore? Because we have new resources. So does that mean that we still need to go out? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because can't an uprising have a different look now in the 21st century? It doesn't need to be us walking, protesting. Maybe it's an online thing, you know? I'm just saying.
We will touch on that idea of a sort of modern uprising later on. I would like to pose a utopian question of sorts about what is an idealism. What does change look like in South Africa in relation to race and equality? It's an abstract question. Answer it.
Do you want to know what change looks like specifically?
Yes.
I mean, we can talk about structural change. I guess that's number one. So in terms of, like Liam said, employment, I guess that's one of the things. And definitely in our schools as well, structural change there as well in terms of policies and hiring policies and the way we manage our schools. And from an ideological perspective, I guess we need to give a narrative that portrays anti-racism as well, right? But it's something that needs to progress over time. It's not something that's going to happen like, we're going to change the system now. We've known 1994, 1996 till now, it doesn't work. The narrative doesn't work, right? We need to place things, structures need to have time to work, right? It takes time. It's not going to happen all at once. So if I say, okay, you need to employ at least 30% of white people, and then the rest all need to be people of color, is it going to make change on such a level that it's going to allow for empowerment of people of color? Or is it just going to make, okay, we have 30% being in our management that are all white, and we're going to have 70% for the rest of our workers, right? There needs to be this change of ideology along with the change of structure. So it doesn't have a specific picture, but that's broadly what it is.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Anybody else want to have a go?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the idea of the change in ideology and not just the change in structure. Like, personally, from how I've seen change attempts to be implemented, I know we mentioned schools earlier, and my high school also went through a period of very intense racial tension. Like, it was always there, but it was also one of those things where it was suddenly in the spotlight, and after which a lot of change was implemented. And I think that the greatest issue, especially, is the fact that we're not starting like right at the grassroots. Like, the fact of the matter is that even though apartheid kind of ended 20 years ago, the same people who were very comfortable living in the apartheid situation, who were very comfortable with the privilege that it afforded them, are still the people writing the textbooks and, setting up things, the systems and so on. They're still the people who are in power, even if they didn't actively play a role in, oppressing people, like, oh, definitely I agree with the apartheid government. Like, they were still there, and they are still very comfortable in that same privilege till today. So in my mind, change starts with acknowledgement, and it starts with education. And I think that one good thing that Black Lives Matter has definitely done, maybe not for everybody, but certainly in the situations that I've seen, is that it's made people scared. And I know that sounds weird, but sometimes fear is really necessary, because people who are comfortable in their privilege will never take the energy to change things that don't affect them. That's just unfortunately how things work out, because why would I need to change it if it does not affect me and my life circumstances? However, as soon as there's enough tension such that they are worried that they are going to lose that, then they have to actively sit up and pay more attention. But unfortunately, what happens is you have people who are comfortable in their privilege continuing to teach those same ideals of, hey, we should try our hardest to hold on to that comfort and privilege to younger generations, and then nothing ever really changes. And it's the same thing with, the ideas that people of color and specifically Black people are any less than white people and, people who are lighter than them, that are also being perpetuated by older generations into younger generations. So it's this hierarchy that is being continuously perpetuated explicitly throughout schooling systems, which is why I think it's so fantastic that so many schools are rising up and being like, no, racism has to end. But racism is never going to end if 90% of my time in junior school I was learning about the 1820 settlers. Who are they? What did they do for me? And not actually, learning anything of real worth. Like, we'll go through apartheid again and again and again, but teaching me about the fact that all of these things happen isn't going to, tell me, there's no sense of acknowledgement that what happened was wrong. You're just teaching me dates and numbers. You're not teaching me that what happened is not okay and it was wrong, and the ideas that these people put forward were wrong, and we have to actively work against them. And also the issue with history classes and schools and everything is, again, the idea that all of it's over, like this normalization that it happened and it's done, and not that, yes, we're learning about this in a history classroom, but history has and always will have knock-on effects on every generation that comes after the event in question. And we have to look at the current situations and actively identify that, because children are not stupid. They really, really aren't. And if anything has shown that, it's things like the protests, the protests that inspired Youth Day as a holiday. Children know how to fight for their own rights and their own equality. And if we continue to, baby them and not allow them to develop ideas that are necessary in order to be a functional adult when they're in school, we're never going to see any change, because they'll be comfortable in their privileges as adults because they were taught to be comfortable in their privileges as children. So in my opinion, change starts with acknowledgement and adjustments to the education system.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of like you would love to have our kids be in the sort of ideal, there's nothing wrong, everything's good, we're all happy situation, but we don't have that privilege anymore,
I feel like history textbooks are written objectively more than subjectively. Objectively, just to give the facts. So yes, things ended, things started, but subjectively, they teach ideals of why this is wrong, and I feel like maybe this is where the schooling system is supposed to come in and is supposed to interpret books and teach the youth why this is wrong. But often I feel like that's not well executed in the classroom. At least from my personal experience. But I want to move to the question that I'm most excited about, and that's why we gathered you all here. We all study different things. So I want to know, in your respective field, what is your field doing, and what do you think you can do in your field to promote equality and racism? What do you think is your duty with your future careers?
Okay, so as I said earlier, I'm a medical student, and a lot of the time when we learn about race in medicine, it's focused on, like, I know that the medical students here will know that we read papers on whether it's necessary to include race as a factor in medical research, which is very complicated because it's like you want to, but also sometimes not valid. Sometimes we also looked at race in terms of the history of this country and how that may impact on health-seeking behaviors or even the structure of our healthcare system. But we very seldom stop to realize the effect of years of systemic racism in the biological sense. Like, there's so many articles written on the fact that the epigenetic changes in the American Black population are such that the average Black person is more predisposed to PTSD because of the amount of stress and trauma over the years. That is a biological change that is because someone experienced something for all those years. we also don't stop to think about how things may affect health-seeking behaviors. Like I'm sure you guys have been seeing, there's this a lot of writing done on how Black people are treated in the healthcare system. And on here, I'm going to draw on Serena Williams because after giving birth, she had something called a pulmonary embolism, which you can kind of think of as a clot in the vessels that are in your lungs. And when she kept complaining about the chest pain to her doctors, everybody belittled it. And she had to go online and diagnose herself for them to take her seriously, which is shocking. And that happens to a lot of Black women in the healthcare system as well. So in terms of what we can do to change it, in as much as we have all this sensitization in terms of having to do all these readings and learn about these things, nothing's going to change unless people actually take the time to step back and reflect on how they may have problem. And I've also realized and told these other people that some people are fervently denying that those things actually happen. And like unless, like Naomi said, we have acknowledgement that that is a problem, it's not going to change. I also want to draw a little thing towards the fact that in South Africa, because of what happened, oftentimes you have people of color living in rural areas, and those areas have very strained healthcare systems, and they receive worse healthcare, and they're neglected, and this and that and the third. And it is very sad to see how very little you see about that in the media. Like the media, in my sense, is there to amplify what needs to be amplified, but you don't really hear about that.
Yeah,
100%.
Can I go now?
Yes, either one of you. Fight.
No one.
Chris, bite it.
Let's go for it,
Okay.
Chris.
So obviously I'm in the classroom, right? I'm working with kids. I'm working with educators. I'm working with principals. I'm working with SGBs, right? And the first thing that needs to change is who gets hired as a principal and who sits on our SGBs. We need to remember that our SGBs are made up of parents who obviously have time to be doing these things, right? They're not parents who work 3 jobs, who work 2 jobs, who come home at 7 o'clock, right? They are parents who have the time to do this. They are obviously, most importantly, they are privileged people. So number one, we need to address our SGBs. We need to address who our principals are, because if we continue to have white men in charge, we are never ever going to see the change in policies that we want. Another thing is hiring policies with regards to educators. Model C schools are white for a reason. They are still white for a reason in terms of educators. Our SGBs, it's been shown, they want to keep an image. Our principals want to keep a specific image for the school. Otherwise, your white learners run away. And what we know from this is that white parents inherently think that if a teacher of color is teaching their child, that the quality of education will be less than what it is that they want, right? So it's hiring educators of color, it's hiring principals of color, and it's ensuring that our SGBs reflect our student population, right? Another thing is we need to look at, like, in terms of governmental policies and curriculum, is how do we teach our kids? Because our kids are learning about racism, but they're learning about overt racism, right? They're not, like, we at university are obviously taught this is what racism is, and it doesn't just come in racial slurs. It doesn't just come in me telling you something. It's something else. It's another thing that we need to start to teach. It's the incorporation of, like, let's say, African literature into our curriculums, number one. We are not teaching enough about things that are inherently POC. We're teaching white education, is what I'm getting at here. We're teaching Westernized education, not African education. And that's where, what comes from the West? Inherently, we're talking about racial issues. Right?
Yeah.
So that's where we need to change. So in the class, I actively need to address myself in that. Who am I favoring in class? Teachers need to be taught as well. I need to be corrected that favoring, that's gone. You're being a racist. Okay? I've recently you've seen online how schools have been called out for their hair policies, for teachers who constantly pick on children of color and children who are different. Those educators need to go. Okay? They need to get out. Again, hiring policies and re-education of our teachers. So
I like that a lot.
Liam, you wanted to say something?
I just want to comment on Chris's thing quickly. Yeah, like teachers who pick on people like based specifically on the race. I remember in grade 2 there was literally this guy. I think his name is Kubani, and the teacher would, like, at 8 o'clock every day without any fail, she would say, "Kubani, did you comb your hair this morning? It looks like there's dead flies on your head." Like literally almost every morning. And anyway, so I do accounting and law, and accounting doesn't really have much substance in terms of racial issues. So let's go to
my paper.
In terms of, like, and it's specifically up to date because I just wrote constitutional law, and we are taught, there's an entire section of the paper, about half of the paper that we wrote this afternoon, that speaks about transformative constitutionalism. The fact that the law was used as a weapon during apartheid because it was legalized racism. You had racism in your laws. You had racism in your regulations by government. Your government and your judges and your courts were racist. They enforced a racist policy. And how do we say that the law is important in our current dispensation in the modern era, but the law has been used as a weapon? How do we prevent that from happening again? And that is where what's really important about our constitution is the Bill of Rights. We have 27 rights in our constitution, and every single law that is interpreted needs to be interpreted keeping all these rights in mind: the right to equality, the right to access to housing, the right to access to healthcare, the right to, like, I cannot tell you how long the case was which determined that the right to healthcare was actually it is legal to include in the constitution. There was a massive argument about the right to healthcare and the right to housing, the socioeconomic rights, because very little constitutions in the world have, like in American constitution, you have nothing about people have right to healthcare, people have right to housing. It's a very progressive thing that our constitution tries to do, to make sure that these rights are inalienable. The government cannot take them away, regardless of what policies it implements. So that's very important, the fact that we try and transform our society through guaranteeing certain rights to our people. In this one case that we had to do, what happened was the government obviously allocates fishing quota to businesses in order to make sure that the marine resources don't go up too fast. And in allocating the resources, the law says that you have to have regard to, as a specific word used, have regard to the transformation. And then when a black-owned business complained and said that they weren't given enough fishing quota to be able to sustain themselves, to sustain the business or grow the business, the High Court and the Supreme Court said those words, have regard to, was just a by the way. It's just saying that they can do it if all the other procedures are in place. It must be kept in the back of the government's mind when they allocate fishing quota. Then the Constitutional Court says, hell no. The most important thing about our Constitution is we go from a point of deeply unjust roots to an egalitarian society where everyone's dignity is respected. And it's very important that we are not on an equal playing field. So equal rights to all is not going to get us to equal rights, because we're not equal. So we need to have a slope that transforms society with regard to economic redistribution of wealth and redistribution of resources in general. And that, I think, is the main heart of our new constitutional dispensation. And that's why I think we have one of the best legal systems in the world in terms of how we are developing. I mean, other nations, we've quoted from Canada's the way they implement their human rights, considering their history. And America is also starting to develop this, have regard to the dignity of everyone. I mean, just recently, you saw on Monday, they guaranteed that you're not allowed to be fired because you're gay. I mean, in 2020, wow, okay. But
Hector
I
just
always
got
like
his
to
hands
quote,
for those who can't see.
I've always liked to quote, the arc of history bends toward justice. And I believe that the best way to bend that arc is by a redistribution of wealth and having regard to the transformation of society when we do anything that we do.
I just want to chip in as another medical student. Myself and the two other members in this group are going to be one of the first NHI doctors. The way things are progressing, and what that means is that we're going to see patients from all walks of life. And the very first thing that I got taught in my becoming a doctor course this year was check your bias, check your bias, check your bias. We have to be very aware of where every single person comes from. And in previous health systems, even our current health system, the idea is the patient comes in for 15 minutes. You don't really care about their social history, where they come from. All you care about is their body, they're sick, we treat it, we give the medication. We don't care if they're even able to afford the medication, if they're able to pick the medication up, if they're able to have the resources necessary to facilitate that and to facilitate the treatment. So what ends up happening is people like give a homeless person various medications. If they can't read starting, that's a problem. If they can't find access to clean water to take their pills, that's another problem. And it just becomes this increasing burden. And so I think my job as a future doctor is to check my bias and to tailor my practice so that I can actually help people to the best of my ability, come up with alternative ways to treat people so that they can work within their circumstances. Because at least where I want to go, I want to be on the ground. I want to be able to treat people. And what that means is that I want to be able to make systemic changes. And as we know, systemic changes take a long time. So I think my job is to figure out what can I do now to help someone. And the first thing we can do is understand where people come from, understand that everyone has different backgrounds because of apartheid, because of institutionalized racism, and what has resulted in them. And then just treat people with dignity, treat them to the best of my ability, and make them feel like a human, and make them feel dignified. I think that's what I have to do.
As we all deserve, yeah. Naomi, do you want to?
Well, I quickly add one thing. I think that at the end of the day, we have to remember that we, like me, Matthew, Asande, those of us who are going to be in healthcare, is that we have a lot of respect given to us because of our choice of career. Just baseline, people will respect us because we have doctor attached to our names. And that means that we have a level of power that other people don't have, and a level of power that means we're listened to. And even though none of us may potentially go into politics or to policy making or whatever, because we have that level of power and because people are more likely to listen to us because our words are taken at a level of this person is educated, this person knows what they're talking about, this person actually knows what's up, is that we have the ability to have a lot of say and share a lot and be listened to in spaces that other people would not necessarily be listened to. And nowhere is this more like apparent than in one doctor who visited us towards the beginning of the first year to speak about her experiences of discrimination because she's transgender, and how she as a doctor is going forth into spaces and ensuring that no other transgender people are treated the same way, yes, by herself, also by her colleagues, by calling them out, but also in that she is in a unique position to advocate for this awareness, because people can't be like, you don't know what you're talking about, because yes, I do know what I'm talking about. I'm a medical professional. This is what I studied. This is what I know. You can't, there's an implicit amount of respect and understanding that you know what you're talking about. And I think that especially for people of color, like the three of us, the fact that we are going to be in those spaces of respect means that we can have these conversations more openly and be taken more seriously by people who otherwise wouldn't take us seriously because of the color of our skin and because of our racial background. Like that level of implicit bias against us because of our stations will not be as, silencing, if that makes sense. And I think that us as doctors, we have to be supportive of the whistleblowers, and we have to be, doing things like we're doing right now. Having these conversations, advocating, not staying silent on matters that are important because we want to save face or save our image, like being willing to speak up because we have the voices that people are willing to listen to. And when I say supporting the whistleblowers in particular, I was made aware of a case in America where there was a nurse, and she called out her fellow colleagues because what was happening is when patients were being intubated in the hospital, a group of her colleagues were not, intubating properly, not looking after the patients after they'd been intubated because they were people of color, like actively going against them and trying to ensure that their health needs were not being seen to. And she brought this up and she was like, this is not okay. This is what these other nurses that I'm colleagues with have been doing. And the problem is in modern society, a lot of the time, whistleblowers, particularly in situations where other people's comfort and privilege is put on a higher level than people's livelihoods and health, is that whistleblowers are either put to the side or someone brings up some issue, something they did wrong 20 years ago where they, someone stubbed their toe and they didn't say sorry, like people will bring things up in order to, take out the validity of their argument. And we as health professionals, I'm sure that we're going to see tons of behavior like this. We're going to see colleagues who actually are not in it to help people. We're going to see racism occur, not just, from colleague to patient, but also between patients, nurses and patients. We're going to be in situations where, people are at their lowest of lows. And when people are at their lowest lows, they lose the filters that otherwise, would stop them from being racist and polite company. And it's up to us to actually call people out on their stuff, but not just to call them out, but to also support others who are calling them out. And yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to add something, but I wanted to wait until everybody medical spoke so I could see what to not add. So we've spoken a lot about the kind of experiences we're going to have with patients, and I think it's also important to highlight that sometimes as a doctor of color, you will, especially working in the public sector, you'll encounter racist patients. I've heard it from many doctors, and I think it's one of those things you have to learn a skill set around. You need to say, if this is going to happen, how am I going to handle it? Because as much as you do have racist patients, I don't feel like I could just step away from someone who's dying just because there's something rude to me. So I think that's very, it's very poignant. It's something that we need to dwell on, and we need to consider, as much as we look at the patient population, how is the medical fraternity being affected by systemic racism as well?
I want to include you a bit in here. You were telling me off camera about a linguistics thing you want to mention with regards to this.
The thing that I want to speak about in this, my fields of study, we don't really there isn't really a sort of hands-on approach with people. I mean, I study information systems and linguistics. Information systems deals with data. There's a huge disconnect between, there's no people involved really. Linguistics, we do, you do have to sort of interview people to study whatever phenomenon you want to study. And there isn't really much I can say, but there's something I love about linguistics. And that is, linguistics promotes this idea that there's no correct way to speak any language. There's no right accent, there's no right pronunciation, there's no, like the way people put emphasis in certain parts of words, there's no right way to do that either. And the reason why that's so important is lots of people speak English, for example, vastly different. And we do something called code switching when we bring in aspects of other languages as well. And some people might say, you're not speaking English properly, like don't abuse my language. And there are some people like who, if I were to bring in that example of a microaggression, where they say, oh, you're quite articulate. I don't have to be your example of articulate to communicate properly. And that's one of the things I love about linguistics. It's the study of language, and we say as linguists, there's no right way to speak. So long as you're getting your message across, that's about it. Moving on to the next point. We've spoken a lot about ways in which we can push towards change, ideal scenarios, and what we can do in our fields, that sort of thing. But what can our youth do to bring about racial equality?
By youth, you mean like anyone under the age of like 25?
Okay, so I want to touch on, if they're under the age of 25, they're going to be people who are potentially working, but it's very hard to address that kind of thing because they're most likely still in like the very junior positions where you say like the slightest thing and they're like, HR needs to call you in, you are no longer working here, good night. But I think it's very, how do I say this? If you're someone who's still in a high school situation, it's slightly easier in quotes to enact change. I was watching something by Zuleika Patel, who did the whole Pretoria Girls High protest, and she's advocating for a schools charter for the youth, by the youth. And I think that's the kind of thing that could change a lot of things. I think the generational disconnect between the people who are educating the youth and what the youth are actually exposed to is quite a big gap. And getting people to say, this is what we think the school rules should look like, codes of conduct are a hot topic, that is very necessary, I think, to enact change. From the topic of the working person under 25, I think it is definitely a lot harder for that kind of person because you just started out, you just finished uni, and saying something has a lot of consequences for you, especially if you're still working your way up. So it'd be interesting to hear what other people have to say on that.
Wonderful. Grant?
So I think about a week or two ago, a bunch, when there was Blackout Tuesday, Herschel Girls School posted a black square. And many of their students, past and present, start posting comments about their racial experiences or experiences of racial abuse against them at the school. Herschel subsequently started deleting comments for various reasons, and an Instagram page called The Silence to show screenshots of those comments. And that has spurred other movements amongst other schools in Cape Town known as the elite schools, your Rustenburg girls, your Bishop's boys, your Weinberg boys and girls. And that's caused a whole sort of debate about racism at schools. So the first question here, which is one that Hector screamed at me the minute I brought this up, is, do you think the schools in posting these black squares is just trying to cover their butts or jump on a trend? Do you think they actually care about matters of Black Lives Matter and race with regards to their students?
Can I ask who's
They're jumping on a
posting
trend,
them?
bruh. Definitely jumping on the trend.
Yeah, 100%. If let's say the Instagram page is not student run, do we really think that someone is posting that because they mean it? I'm just asking, you know, they're not. They're jumping on a trend, 100%. And then you get schools who are not posting it. And then you're also like, okay, well, you guys are just being blatantly open with whatever image you guys are sending.
Either way, we see through you.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I have loved every moment of that. I loved it. Whenever I saw a school posting a black square, I would literally just wait for the comments. I would wait for the side Instagram. I loved every moment. I was like, Safa, you guys need to see what you're doing to people. Because, you know, when you speak to other people, you have these conversations. They're like, yeah, my school wasn't allowed to wear an afro. And it's like, okay, but why didn't you do anything about it? Fear plays a big role. That generational age gap of I have the power and you don't. And people have social media. We are better social media techies than them. Bring down some from the back. I loved it.
Yo guys, I'm just I love what you're saying about how the black squares are just them jumping on a trend, because back in, I think it was 2016, when Pretoria Girls High School had the whole hair fiasco, and then the thing is, what's going on now is obviously the elitist schools in Cape Town there. But back then in 2016, my school went through the same thing. Everybody was calling out all the racism. Everything was not okay. And what did my school do? They commissioned a painting by George Pemba's grandson. A beautiful, and you know, like, this painting was 2.5 meters wide and 1.5 meters tall. And it was a painting of isiXhosa ladies dancing at a funeral. And it was a beautiful painting, lovely painting, amazing. And they hung it up in the foyer, and that's the equivalent of the black square. Because what did that painting do for anyone? Literally, I don't see how a painting is going to erase however many years of racism children have been experiencing at this school. Like, exactly. Where? You know, like, the level of appeasement that schools are willing to do in order to sweep their issues under the rug is phenomenal. Like, it's actually amazing the lengths to which people will go in order to not deal with the actual issue. It just shocks me so much. And the thing is, this stuff started so long ago. This stuff started with the Soweto uprisings. It literally did. But why are we still fighting for this today? I don't understand. Why in 2016 were people still having to fight to be able to wear their hair like this? Why must I fight to look like what I'm supposed to look like? Why must I be forced to look like what you think is the ideal of neatness? Like, and why is your ideal of neatness based on some 18th century girl in the UK? Who is she? Where did she come from? What does she have to do with me?
That doesn't even touch on issues of gender either.
Yeah, it's just, it shocks me. It shocks me, but it doesn't shock me. The way that schools are continuing to do this thing, like the posting of the black squares, when everyone knew. We all knew that it was just for the sake of saying, we also definitely are a part of this, 100%. Even though...
Yeah, it's a thing where if you point at someone, 3 fingers point back at you. Like
the age-old cliche. You love that.
I love the glitch. It's pronounced glitch. I can pronounce things how I want to.
As long as we understand you, then yes.
Exactly, it's a glitch. Exactly. Thank you. So I want to. I've been waiting for like 5 minutes.
One thing.
Asande, go for it.
I just saw under a lot of the pages where people are suddenly like outing the racism at schools. A lot of people said that whenever they tried to bring these things up, schools would be like, just go back to your township school, whatever. And I think that's very appalling to say that, because we all know where spatial segregation came from. And then instead of fixing your issues, you're basically telling people to go back to those little squares the government demarcated back in the day. I found that very appalling as a school body to say that to a student who was trying to enact change.
How can you get away with that?
I don't know.
It's wild.
But it was under a lot.
It's a bit brazen.
Yeah, but
that you are sending your kids to, parents who are listening. Grant, I'm getting a text message from our resident economist, Michael de Brocklio.
I also got one from Michael de Brocklio. I'll read it out. So Michael couldn't make it for this week's economy section, but he messaged me and it's so sad. So he wants to know, so do you think schools, businesses in general, do you think they should, in terms of the school or the businesses sort of ideals, does a company that sells plumbing equipment have to say something about Black Lives Matter if it has nothing to do with their business?
There's a lot of going on. So plumbing.
It's just a question Michael had.
Yeah. I think schools as well. Schools they act as a business at the end of the day. They just want to make more money, have more under the cover donations, and they'll do whatever it takes. Just like businesses, they just want to make money. They don't care about the people involved. Right?
Could be like that sometimes.
Apple Watches sell more. There's a Pride Watch brand. Let's not lie about it.
Yeah.
Like I don't look to. We know that I mean that's the model of a business. Spend as little money as possible and make as much money as possible. And nothing's going to fundamentally change that. I mean, we have many businesses that say, we have good corporate governance, we have corporate social responsibility, we give a bit of money to this charity, that charity. Okay, you just want them to put up your banners. Like when we had our athletics days, Spur would be there, like, yeah, we're supporting schools, but we're buying Spur burgers. That's what they want. But I don't mind it so much when you can, like, for example, Nike. They said that they stood firmly behind Colin Kaepernick. They stood behind the fact that he was able to his right to kneel during the American anthem. And I don't mind it so much when they make a political statement like that, as long as they back it up with money. They need to, put their money where their speech writers are. Like, as long as they are, giving to these charities, giving to these development funds, as they can say what they want to, but they have to back it up with actual action. And so that they can get the brownie points for supporting these good causes, but they're also actually supporting these causes and making sure these causes fulfill what they want to do.
Yeah, they need to walk the walk if they're gonna talk the talk. Anything else, Naomi?
If they want to show they give a
do I need to mark that?
Mark that.
That was folk. FALK. That doesn't count.
Folk.
Anyway,
yeah.
But this has been going on for forever and ever and ever. Even Apple did this thing where they blocked out all their pages on the music app in protest against Joe.
Let us stop the music. Stop the music. You couldn't actually use Apple Music that day, and they turned on, like, the only thing you could listen to on Apple Music was Beats One, which was playing black artists.
What was shocking to me is I went on Reddit and I went and looked at what people had to say about this, and most people were like, they can't do this. I paid for this service and I deserve my music. But come on, like, you clearly don't understand. You clearly are part of the problem.
Interesting fact, I spoke to an ex-teacher of mine, and she had an Instagram page at that school, and she spent the entire day fending off parents who were saying, but all lives matter, and arguing that the school should not be involved in political talks. And she just messaged me and she said, I want to strangle them, but I can't.
I know the teachers.
Yes, don't understand. Even parents don't fully understand the movement. But we're going to move to our last question, which
not
is,
so much a
you
question.
Guys have any experience? Not so much a question as much as a statement. Do you guys have any stories, things that stand out that happened to you or people that you know at your schools that was involved in racism? And share your personal experiences, please.
Hey, I did my flies on the air story.
Yeah, no. Yes. I have many. However, I don't want to speak to the personal experiences that didn't happen to me, because I don't want to misinterpret and mistell stories. However, there are certain shared experiences that everyone at my school went through. I also went to former Model C all-girls school, very British hierarchy. Our sports houses were named after English queens. Like, we had their portraits hanging in the school foyer, and it was like all of these, you literally got a school award for being graceful and nice and a good woman, being a lady. You got school awards for being a lady. There were many problematic issues at my school. So what happened is, after the entire 2016 Pretoria Girls High School hair thing, our school changed a lot of their rules. They really, I mean, they tried, hey. They changed rules on hair, they changed cultural rules, they tried to actually, bring in more varied songs and hymns into our like daily assemblies, bring in different languages. As a result, we started singing a lot of songs in isiXhosa for spirit assemblies and so on and so forth. And during the one spirit assembly, usually what happened was, first of all, my school was majority white. When I say majority white, I mean like majority white. I think a representative of the Department of Education once visited, and he was like, "Your school is lily white." Like he literally said that with no compunction, and everyone was like, and all the girls of color were just like, "Yeah, ne, that's what we've been saying the whole time." But what happened is, what often happened was that during the English and Afrikaans songs, the white students were not into it. Like they just would not sing. And obviously for the people of color, especially the ones that didn't have Afrikaans or English as their first language, they wouldn't really be into it either because it's not my language, so they wouldn't sing that loudly. But then when we got to the isiXhosa songs, people got excited. And the thing about most people of color is, when they get into a vibe, they vibe, man. Like it was a great time. People were dancing, people were singing loudly, and the thing is that kind of energy is infectious. So everybody got up, everybody started dancing. Like it was an actual spirit, like people had school spirit in that moment, and it was beautiful. And then as we were leaving the hall, this one white girl turns to her friend and she's like, I wish we were back in apartheid so we wouldn't have to go through all of this. And what
is going on in this world?
Of course, somebody overheard her, and she was like, "Yeah, this girl didn't confront her. She was like, no, we're not having this out right here, and then I get in trouble for calling this girl out." She went straight to Twitter, and she put it on Twitter, and was like.
I was thinking the administration was like,
this school that thinks it's so.
That's higher. That's higher than the principal.
Yeah.
It's started social media.
Principal can't touch Twitter.
And the way it exploded. And the thing is, the girl who overheard her knew exactly who this girl was. So names were there. Names were taken. It was all over social media. It went to Facebook. It was on Instagram. Like there was no running away from it. Next, and that was a Friday, because the last thing in the day was the spirit assembly. Everybody went home. By the time Monday came, the whole school knew what this girl had done, and she had to make public apology. But that basically boiled down to, "I'm sorry that you caught me saying it." But anyway, so when that happened, it was basically like, take the racial tension that was going on over the hair rules and everything, and then times it by 25, and the whole school exploded. And it was a thing of, the girls of color were like, "But this has always been how it's been." And those who were not of color were like, "Yeah, but it was just one person making one comment. Why are you guys getting so worked up about it?" But the fact of the matter is that was just the one comment that actually got put on social media, the one comment that was public. There were teachers for years haranguing students over any number of imagined faults because of ultimately racial issues. And the thing is, whenever people of color at the school complained, we'd get not necessarily told by teachers, but definitely told by our peers, "Then why do you go to the school? Why don't you just go somewhere else?" And it's a thing of, so what you're saying is, in order to get a good education, I must be silent. Like, is that what you want? Like, in order to be in a space you consider to be yours, I must be silent. That this space is not mine also. That I can't demand to be treated properly in a space that I am also in. And I remember one of the girls in my class literally turned around and said, "I pay the same school fees that you pay to be here. You have no more right than I do to be treated like a human being in this space." But it just, people didn't listen, and people continue not to listen. Like, the school did try, like they had a transformation committee, and they tried to get people to have conversations and so on and so forth. But the problem is that when microaggressions happened, when teachers said something, when students said something, it would ultimately be a thing of, oh, they're sorry, they apologized, it's over. So nothing ever really changed. It was a thing of outwardly, we're making all these changes and we're going to change this and we're going to do that and we're going to do this. But when any issue actually happened, nothing changed. And here we are again in 2020. Schools are getting up and being like, this has been happening, ding, 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 ding. And what changed? Nothing changed.
That is a lot. I was not expecting that.
Chris, do you want to say something?
I wasn't expecting. I was listening to the story. She was talking about like the Xhosa songs, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. Then she got to the end. When she said, but then, I was like, wow, this is exactly where the story just turns left. So at my school, I think that we were, looking back, although I went to a private school, we were very diverse. Like it started out being majority white, but by the time I left the school, there was a lot more people of color, and it was a lot more representative of the demographic of the population. So as a result, I don't think I faced any entrenched racism the way we're seeing in various Cape Town schools. It was more very subtle instances, like again, the whole thing about the hair rule and hair policing, although by the time I left, it wasn't much of an issue. I'm not sure what's happening now. The one thing that I can't forget are like the times when a student says something and you can see that they don't think that what they just said is actually insulting. Like I think Naomi already knows the story that I went on a school trip and a couple of people went broke, and those people happened to be people of color. And I was told that I'm not like other Black girls because I didn't go broke. And I was like, what's that supposed to mean? Or there'd be little things like people insinuating that you can't swim, and it's like, no, but I can actually swim. On the same trip, I remember a teacher of another school, because we mix schools, they were like, it's so nice to see a Black girl like you swimming, but the Black girls in my school don't swim. And I was like,
all right.
Really? So, exactly. So I don't think I faced systemic things. Like it wasn't a systemic problem.
I'm sure she had a Black friend though. On Facebook.
Yeah.
Twitter's where it's at, Liam. Come on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Christopher?
I want to speak to like what schools are actually doing about racism in schools. Like, why do we deal with it so ineffectively? For me, it's because we have internal procedures. So it's because we have an SGB that takes on these cases. And again, who's on the SGB that decides what is the punishment? People who are obviously not POC, right? So that's, for me, that's one of the possibilities why punishments are not being dealt effectively. So for me, if someone is going to say a racial slur, I want you out of my class for good. Unfortunately, that's just it. I don't deal with it. I had someone in my class, when was it? It was this year, and it was one of my grade 10s. And he said something, and I chucked him out of the class because he said it. Okay? I don't care. I didn't care who he was. I sent him, because they've got this thing where you go to another classroom to cool off. So I sent him there. Did he learn his lesson? Maybe not. But I think he understood that he can't use that word in my class. When I brought it up with the principal, obviously afterwards, he was like, okay, he'll deal with it. Don't know what happened. I did ask about it, and apparently he had a hearing for what he said. But obviously that it only goes that far, because, okay, we'll sit on our SGBs. So that's why it's so ineffective, I guess. And teachers don't know. In terms of Asande, what you were saying, teachers are not desensitized to these things. They are not at all, because they are still so comfortable with teaching white children all the time. They are not comfortable with teaching children of color. And that's where the issue comes in. When schools don't allow children of color in, we get issues like this where teachers don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They're not capable. Can I put it that way? I mean, they are capable. They just don't want to be capable.
Yeah, you're loud and clear, Chris.
I have it's like a question, kind of like an opener. So I'm sure you guys might have heard of a lady. We get her name, but she was in Central Park walking her dog in a zone where her dog was supposed to be leashed. And there was another man on the path, yes, and who just happened to be a black man. He's like, "Excuse me, can you please leash your dog? This is a bird watching area. Respect the rules." And she threatened to call the cops and say that an African American man is threatening her life. And the video went viral, and as a result, she had to issue a public apology, and she was fired for her job. So in relation to what was said about taking kids out of the classroom and getting hearings and stuff, I'd like to hear what you guys think about canceling someone forever because of something they said. Because on the one hand, I want people to learn their lesson. But on the other hand, when someone loses like an entire source of income, it's like, okay, that I really sucks to go through that. So I'm like, what's the middle ground between teaching a lesson, but like not entirely trashing their lives? You know, like what's the middle ground?
Go for it, Chris.
So I mean, I don't know. Like when I say I don't want you in my class, I don't want you in my class until you understand what you've done. I'm one of those like people when I'm in a class is that I like to be very theoretical and I like to explain things and I say things for like as they are, right? I call a spade a spade. I don't go two ways about it. So if you don't understand what's wrong with your statement until you learn what you obviously did not understand, then you can come back in. You're not, in my eyes, you're not cancelled, right? But you need to learn what is right and what is wrong because obviously you don't understand. And that's, I think, where the gap is.
Yeah, Galant and I have spoken about social media before. I'm very anti-cancel culture. I believe that you can be rehabilitated to say you can learn a lesson and you can re-enter society as a functioning human being. Liam?
I believe I believe it all has to do with the intention behind it. So the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he's a very liberal person. It's one of the most liberal societies on earth because of Justin Trudeau and his policies. But I think it could be a year ago at this point, a few parties and stuff like that, wearing brown face. He went as Aladdin and he thought he needed to be authentic, so he painted his face brown. And I mean, people went insane, justifiably insane. Like, why? But obviously, I'm not going to excuse it by saying it wasn't like people didn't know it was bad at the time because it was still frowned upon. And but the most important thing and why he still has the job today is because people know him. They know who he is. They know what his intention was. His intention was definitely not to violate the dignity of any person who saw that picture or any person that was at that party. And that's where intention comes in. Now, when you look at something like the Mrs. A candidate that was cancelled from the Mrs. A pageant or competition because of
connection issue.
Why a 14-year-old needs, or rather a 20-year-old needs to be liable for things they did when they were 14. And it's difficult for me to fathom, first of all, why she would post things like that. That's in of itself a problem. But also why people would dig up, these things that she said and then hold her today liable for the things she did when she was a teenager. And perhaps, they felt it was good that someone that had that history shouldn't be, representing South Africa in a Mrs. A pageant. I don't know what the motivation was for digging up stuff like that. But often people don't realize that when you say something like that about someone who you show this thing that they did, that's going to affect their employment prospects for the rest of their life. And should someone suffer for the rest of their life for things they said when they were 14? I think not. And it would be staggering to think that people should be held liable for these things. So it's very important to look at the intention of people behind that. The Kevin Hart story. Why should Kevin Hart, be stopped from hosting Oscars because of things he said well over 10 years ago at that point? And yes, it's very insensitive things, but it's very difficult to hold people accountable, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago for the models of today's society. Because, I mean, if you look at someone like Charles Dickens was a wife abuser. Like, he was very known for drinking too much while writing, and then his wife would have it. So should we not read any Dickens? I think he's a piece of trash author, but people like him, and he definitely shows something in humanity that very little authors. Yeah, he's trash. Yippee. But like, should everyone be cancelled because of today's models? It's especially if they are, below the age of 18 when they did these things. People shouldn't be punished for all their life.
I think for me, I don't think I've been fortunate. I've not experienced too many forms of racism against myself. But one thing I always find is that because of the way I speak and the accent, and I don't have a quote unquote intelligent accent, I find that a lot of the times I don't necessarily get taken seriously, despite me being right. So even at medical school, I've experienced this quite a number of I've experienced it quite a number of times where I'll be in a group. Objectively, I'm right. I will be at school and someone ask a question, I explain the question. I will have my textbook in front of me with the answers, but I just explain the correct thing. They still will not believe me, but they will believe the kid without question who has a quote unquote smarter accent or that elitist accent. And I think there's a lot of inherent biases to do with how you sound. Sometimes people get caught up on the way my voice sounds rather than what my voice is saying. So I find, and just how I present, it's just an inherent bias amongst people, which I find is something we all have to grow out of eventually. Yes, but I think that wraps it up for this episode. Thank you all for coming onto the episode with us. Is there anything you guys want to plug just one more time? Your social medias, any causes you want people to do? Asande?
I forgot to plug my TED Talk. My TED Talk urgently needs views. Please can you plug me? Watch my TED Talk. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else?
Also, don't forget that it's Pride Month, everybody. Yes! The whole world is falling apart, but guess what? It's still Pride Month. Let's remember the Stonewall riots. So the reason we celebrate Pride Month, and that they were called riots and violent back then, but guess what? We wouldn't have change without them. So remember that when you're like, protests are violent, they need to be sometimes. Enjoy the rest of your Pride Month, everybody.
Liam, anything you want to plug?
Thank you.
You guys can play me on chess.com. My name is Comrade Jack the Beast. I'm not much of a social media person, so play me in chess and
play with him.
Email me. Yes, play with my bishop.
Let's mark that, Christopher.
Christopher.
I mean, I'm running to follow that. I'm running a series on Instagram starting this week, actually. But it's going to continue on deconstructing conservatism in our schools. So what do our rules tell us, and how does that affect various aspects of education?
Once again, what's your Instagram, just to clarify?
That's @Christopher_Williamson.
Yes. So if you guys want to follow them, all information will be down in the show notes or in the YouTube description, whatever you're looking at. Find the details, then click on it. The information will be there. That is it from Two Matt. Stuck in conversation. Have a great life. Okay. Good night, people.
Good night.
So thank you very much to Christopher, Liam, Asande, and Naomi for coming on today. We hope that we shed some light on the topic at hand. We think it's very important that we speak about these things. Go check out our last podcast. It's on YouTube. Our social medias at 2 Mad Stuck in Conversation on Instagram. I'm not gonna say that we are necessarily qualified to speak about this, but
Yeah.
We needed to speak about it.
Don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube.
Doing that now?
And rate us on Spotify.
Now?
I feel like we have to want to be a real podcast.
Tell your friends
check it out. It's
about this educated conversation. Thank you very much for listening. This has been 2 Mad Stuck in Conversation. Goodbye.
Night, everyone.